Alright, welcome to the series on mixing consoles. So I had said we're going to go right into Wikipedia here, and we're just going to go one step at a time reading through it, and what we'll do is we're just going to read through it. And when we run into some things that are questionable or need a little bit more clear definition, then we'll address them as we go through. Because a lot of times that these kinds of resources are great, but if you don't have some understanding of some of the things happening anyway, that some people will get on there and go, yeah, well, that's a great thing, but, I really don't understand a mixing console any more than I did before. Because, they might not exactly be, designed for somebody that has absolutely no concept of what's going on there. Or a lot of the concepts of those videos that I had you watch. So that's one of the biggest reasons why I had you watch those videos and look at some of those software tools, so that when you come into this series that, a lot of these things are going to be, pretty easy to understand as far as, their application, that way that, as something's being explained, that you can directly relate it to something that you've already watched on those videos or some of the other tools I showed you. So one other thing I did want to point out is that the front of that channel, of this channel that you're on, is that there's two links. One of them, there's two links on there to audio engineering information, and there's two links and they both look like a fish, and you click on either one of those links and they will give you can get all kinds of information about all kinds of different subjects. There's a personal search engine to a guy that has passed away, that his son's taking care of his site and all the information he put on the internet. That's an invaluable source, and especially in situations like this, that you might be dealing with all kinds of different types of, factors and acoustics, in this, dealing with this instrument. So that's another huge resource for you to look into. So basically what we're going to do is we're just going to start right at the beginning and start reading through it, and then just branch out from there. So if you're ready, we're going to get started on our series on the mixing console. Alright, I hope you had checked out both those two links real quick, and let's get started. It says in audio, when we're dealing with audio engineering, acoustics, and recording, mixing, and mastering in the studio, how we're looking at it, a mixing console is an electronic, or it can be a software in the DAW, or device for combining, also called mixing. So it's basically to combine different signals, from different instruments and things like that. So we understand that concept is fairly simple. Routing and changing the volume and timbre. Well, changing the volume is pretty, easy to understand, that you're actually just trying to change the decibel level of whatever you're working with. That's simple to understand. The timbre can be a little more complex, and we'll get into that. You should have watched those videos on timbre so you understand what that is. And basically, whenever you're trying to change the timbre, that more than likely, if you're working with a console, that you may be working a little bit with an expander, a compressor probably, and dealing with equalization, and I don't know how many knobs your actual console you might be working with has on it, or if it has a full parametric EQ or whatever, but we'll get into that a little bit more. To change the tone and color, and or dynamics. So we understand what the dynamics are. Dynamics, you should have watched, if you watch those videos, you understand what some of the dynamics are of many different audio signals, such as microphones being used by singers, mics picking up acoustical instruments such as drums or saxophones, signals from electric or electronic instruments such as electric bass or synthesizers, or recorded music playing on a CD player. A mixer is available to control analog or digital signals. Now, that's one thing that we'll address as we go along, that sometimes, most of the time, that any kind of thing that you're recording is going to be an analog signal. So the exterior, if you watch that video on acoustics, that that you've got an analog signal that you're trying to capture, with some type of analog device, more than likely a microphone or a pickup or something like that. Somewhere along the line might be getting converted into a digital signal. So there was a prime example why I wanted you to watch both those videos on analog and digital signals, because it's going to somewhere more than likely get crossed over a digital signal, and it's going to go into your DAW or into your audio interface for your DAW, that it's going to get converted there. So can be an issue also. because sometimes you're working both inside the DAW and in the console, so it's going to get changed over somewhere. Depending on the type of mixer, the modified signals, voltage or digital samples, voltages when we're dealing with analog signals, and digital samples and digital signals when we're dealing with it in the digital realm, are summed, meaning put together, they're combined, to produce the combined output signals, so that you have a combined signal that is your mix or complex polar waveform, which can then be broadcast, amplified through a sound reinforcement system, some kind of speaker system, some kind of system, whether it's live or in the studio, that it's being played through or recorded. It's either being recorded in your DAW, or it might be recorded by some ancient archaic things they give it a really nice analog sound that you like for some reason, I don't know. So, that's a real basic understanding. Let's go on here. Mixing consoles are used in many applications, including recording studios, public address systems, sound reinforcement systems, nightclubs, dance clubs, broadcasting, television, film, post-production. A typical simple application combines signals from two microphones, each used by vocalists singing a duet, perhaps into an amplifier that drives one set of speakers simultaneously. So there can actually be a built-in amplifier, or it can be actually routed from the console into an amplifier that's going to the speakers. In live performance, the signal from the mixer usually goes directly to an amplifier, which is plugged into speaker cabinets. Unless the mixer has a built-in power amplifier or connected to powered speakers, a DJ mixer may have only two channels for mixing two record players. A coffeehouse tiny stage might only have 6-channel mixer, enough for 2 singer, guitarists, or a percussionist. A nightclub stage mixer for rock shows might have 24 channels, and in the studio you can come up with as many as like 72 channels or more. In practice, mixers do more than simply mix signals. They can provide phantom power, and phantom power that we've talked about, and we'll talk about that again, supplying power to your dynamic microphones, or supplying power to your condenser microphones, I should say, supplying power for other things that you might be trying to run into it, most of the time for microphones. For capacitor microphones, pan control, changing the pan sound's apparent position in the stereo sound field, and that's another thing I wanted you to go watch that video series on the stereo field, so you have a little bit better understanding of what's happening there. Filtering and equalization. Equalization is a real easy concept to understand when you're looking at the knobs and you've got low or high or mids and an easy system. And filtering can be a little bit different, because sometimes just about anything you do to an audio signal could be considered filtering. So I mean, that can be very huge range of actual instruments or things that might be built into the actual console. Most of the time you kind of want to keep that fairly simple, and have those external, because you'll probably come up with better equipment that does a better job anyway. Most of the time I use the stuff in the DAW because it's cleaner to work with, which enables sound engineers to boost or cut selected frequencies to improve the sound, routing facilities to send the signal from the mixer to another device, such as another hardware device for compression, or phase, or any kind of effect or anything like that, such as a sound recording system or a control room, is sending it to a DAW or some other type of recording system, or to a control room from where they're at. And monitoring facilities, where one of a number of sources can be routed to loudspeakers or headphones for listening. So, basically, that's a basic outline of what it's supposed to do. Now, if you don't have anything about understanding about a mixer, and you're watching this video series, that you're probably not going to come away from that being a professional mixer. So we probably should dig in a little bit deeper. When we go down a little bit farther, we've got a few things to deal with. We've got terminology, structure, a whole bunch of things that are some basic, parameters of mixing consoles, and they probably aren't addressing every one of them anyway. And as we go along, we're going to address a whole lot of different issues. So basically, what we're going to do after reading that we've addressed a couple of the issues that that we've hopefully that you've watched those videos. So most of those things we talked about don't seem they're very easy to understand and self-explanatory, and that's the whole reason why I wanted you to watch those videos, so that that's why a lot of times you watch this stuff and not understand what's going on. terminology, it's an audio mixer, audio console, mixing desk, sound mixer, soundboard, or simply a board or mixer. That's pretty easy to understand. Some terms to remember. And structure. A typical analog mixing board has 3 sections: channel input, master controls, and audio leveling. Now, one of the things about this is that the structure can be the problem, and the whole issue is that, we're going to address it from, going through this one step at a time through this Wikipedia, but you have to understand that sometimes things aren't set up the same way on other mixing consoles, or you can get consoles that are actually set up a lot differently. The basic understanding of what they're trying to do and the basic components, the simple concept that is a mixing console should be fairly similar, maybe routed or set up and look a little bit different or something like that. But nowadays it can get really complex. So you'll be looking at a system and they've got all kinds of stuff going on that you'd be like, well, what is that? Why is that on there? And it's like those kind of things. Sometimes you just have to step back and go, well, what is that section? Because a lot of times you look at it as separate modules. This module here that's dark, this module here that's gray. You can see each one of those modules are separated by a little line. And you address each one of those modules separately. What is that doing and what is its routing? Where is it coming from? Where is the signal coming from to that module and where is it going? Does that make sense? Because that's a huge thing to understand when what is the signal flow through the console and what each module is doing. And that's a huge thing that can be very different on a whole lot of different mixers, which can cause confusion if you don't understand the basics of what's happening. And if you understand to go look for those routings and things like that, they can cause you a lot less confusion, because now at least you know what you're looking for. You ain't just wandering around in the dark going, what the heck's going on? So anyway, that's some basic, the basic outline of it. So, what we're going to do now is we're going to stop right here in this video. And we kind of went through what they were talking about, and we're going to go right into structure. So get ready for this, because this is going to be important, because as we go through structure, there's going to be some things that we address, because structure can vary from different consoles. And so you can be sitting around, and I've seen people, look at a console and they just got no clue what's going on, because they're not trying to apply the structure to the basic components that we need to address. So they can go find those components, not sit there and look at the structure as this big complex thing, that they can zero in on go find the components that we're getting ready to talk about, the modules that we'd be talking about. Where are they at in that structure on that console? Rather than looking at the console and going, what is that? Start looking for those separate modules and those different aspects of the mixing console that we're going to talk about, and look for those rather than look at the console as a big thing. Find those separate things, and then after you've basically figured out where everything is at that you know of, then go on to address things you don't know what that is. Well, I've addressed everything that I know of, and I don't know what that module is. What the heck is that? Does somebody here know what that is, or do I put on a manual? And then address that after you found the other modules that we're going to discuss in structure. So get ready. I'll see you in the next video, and we're going to start talking about structure.